I'm Diego Cortez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Back with another edition.
Another hit edition.
And a young man named Andrew Robl joins us today.
Good
Very smart,
to
very
see
articulate.
you.
Online, he's known as Good to See You. People who play online are very familiar with him because he's been extremely successful at all stakes, and he also plays in the live games. People who don't, who only follow the document circuit,
No, they
maybe
might
aren't
not
as
know.
familiar,
Right.
but he's the type of person that's worked his way up, very thoughtful, very interesting, and it should be a good show. A lot of young guys made their name on the internet playing big stakes, but you also play a lot at Bobby's Room in the old school live game atmosphere. Is that correct, or have I been misinformed?
Yes, I do. I play a lot in Bobby's Room, but I don't play the big mix games. You know, I only play the big bet games, PLO and No Limit.
And how is that any different from the online game where you've made a name for yourself and other people too?
Well, I mean, it's a totally different game because online, you know, I mostly play six-handed, and the games are capped at 100 big blind buy-ins.
Mm-hmm.
And then live, you know, most of the time, I like to set really deep, and so do a lot of the other players. So, you know, you're playing up to 1,000 big blinds deep, which totally changes, you know, the strategy of the game. Online, you know, it's a lot faster paced. You get it all in all the time. A lot of hands go to showdown. And, you know, live, you know, you get to see 10 or 20 hands that don't go to showdown just because it's so deep.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, if they're going to showdown a lot, that'd be quite the
Yeah.
miracle with that deepest stack.
You're playing
Yes.
1,000 big blinds deep at what limits?
Pretty, like, when I play in Bobby's Room, it's, like 100, 200 or bigger with an ante. So it's pretty deep. Also, just live games in general, once you get to, like, the 25, 50 limit, they're all uncapped. So they're playing just much cheaper than online.
When you mentioned playing Six Max online, you're saying even these games are full, nine-handed, or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it depends on how big the game is, obviously. You know, the bigger the game is, the less likely it is to fill up. But, yeah, I mean, most of the time the live games are going to be 8 or 9-handed compared to 6-handed online.
Are you exercising a lot of game selection, or are you just go in and play?
Well, I mean, normally, you know, the live game's going, there's, you know, someone in the game who's not a professional, so, I mean, that's all it takes for me to play. Obviously, you know, if, like, Patrick and Phil Ivey are playing heads up, I'm not going to go jump in with them.
I'd be the third.
What?
I'd be the third player.
You don't want to be the third with
Yeah,
those two.
yeah.
And so even in those big games, there are like drop-in rich businessmen or just faces you don't recognize?
No, I mean, I recognize all the faces, but, you know, in games that big, it actually prices out a lot of, you know, the professionals. They just can't afford to play.
Well, sometimes they say that like the second biggest game or the third biggest game is much tougher than the biggest game because when the super rich guy from out of town comes in, he's not going to sit in the third biggest game. He sits in the biggest game.
Yeah, and that might be true also. And just in general, like, people have, you know, this conception that the bigger, you know, you play, the harder the game's going to be. And it's true that, you know, the good players in the games get much, much tougher. So, I mean, the games do get tougher, but it's not, you know, like the jump that some people think it is. It's not a whole new ball game.
Yeah, overall it might not be tougher if you have the right spots.
Yeah,
and
I
the
mean,
guy who's playing just for ego, he just wants to play in the biggest. He's not gonna worry about it.
Well, on average, you know, it's a lot bigger. And, you know, some people who are like, you know, people who are worth like $100 million or whatnot, they don't want to, you know, play in a game that's $1, $2. I mean, what fun is that going to be? That would be, you know, like going and playing blackjack for like 25 cents. Like, you know, you're not going to get any excitement out of it.
I do play that. Now, but a guy who's worth $100 million and who comes and sits in the game, he might not have the skill for the game, but he is properly bankrolled.
Yes.
Do you feel you're properly bankrolled? And I'm not saying that you're not, but what are your bankroll considerations in those giant games?
Well, I mean, no one in the game is bankrolled for him. It's gambling.
Yeah. It seems like, I mean, that's one thing that's kind of come back, which is guys not being properly bankrolled. For a long time, there weren't really big games, so it kind of forced people to play within their bankrolls. Now there's a preponderance of big games, and a lot of people just don't have an appreciation for how big the swings can be.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, in games like that, you know, there's going to be big swings, and you can definitely, people do get hurt, you know. I guess in like the year and a half I've been around it, you know, I've seen some pros go broke and whatnot.
You have to see.
Yeah, so, I mean, it definitely does happen.
You find that online, people who've grown up playing online with multiple tables and with the fast action, where people just tilt being in one game where the action's much slower? I mean, just physically slower.
Yeah, or I mean, for sure. I've seen some very talented poker players who, A games are very good. They're very creative. Way better than a lot of the players who play in these live games, and they just can't win because, they don't have the patience to play, tight enough to win nine-handed.
I've always thought that for people that are overly loose and who also are prone to tilt, online is a good medicine in the sense that you're not really punished as much for that. I mean, you've got multiple tables, so you don't feel pressured to play a lot of hands. You're getting all the action you want, and when you're playing live, you've got one table. You might go a few rounds without getting a hand. Now you feel like I don't care what I'm getting the next hand. I'm going to start playing, and I'm going to mix it up. And if you've lost a few hands, you don't even have a chance to win one and calm down because you just need to get in there with the next one.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. Like, and it's way harder, to get unstuck live too, which makes
Right.
people, play worse when they're losing.
Right.
And also there's a humiliation factor in person when the person who's just ripped your soul out is sitting right there having a great time, laughing it up with his buddies, and you have to sit there physically. That's worse than online where you could just snap the table shut, and a lot of times people don't know who the other guy is.
Well, I think snapping the table shut's a good point too, in the sense that there's a humiliation of actually getting up and
Right, leaving is embarrassing
storming out of
if
the
you have to
room.
leave with no.
Yeah. I mean, stuff like that never bothered me, but, definitely it does get pretty intense in the game, when some people are stuck big, and other people are laughing and joking. There's definitely, I've definitely seen more than one confrontation.
Even if they're not doing it intentionally, it's still.
Yeah, or I mean, when you're winning and whatnot, you're in a good mood,
Yeah.
you're more likely to talk and make jokes, and, it's more likely to bother the people losing also.
I want to step back to something you just said a minute ago. You said that you've seen pros go broke, and I'm sure that some of them are really talented pros. Does that
Yes.
concern you that, I know you're a talented player, but you could have a bad swing and really hurt your bankroll?
Well, I mean, I've definitely gone through, I've played in some really big games over the past year and a half, so there's been a lot of up and downs, but the way I view it is I think I'm a very talented poker player, I've worked my way up from the very smallest limits, and I always know, no matter what happens, I'll always be able to make, a very good living playing the mid-stakes games online. Not always, but for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And it's not a problem for you to play those stakes if you have to, or even lower if you had to.
I mean, I wouldn't like it, it definitely takes a adjusting period, to get your back in the right state of mind and whatnot, and to really gear down and play good in those games. But, I don't think it's anything I have a problem with.
I mean, I saw a quote in the course of our extensive research in which you'd said that no one had made as much as you had in kind of those mid-level, mid-limit, no limit, pot limit games online. So I was wondering, is that the fact that there's so much value in those games that even compared to other people who kind of played really big, and you certainly have played big, but that you've focused your efforts on that and just mined those games, or just that you did great in those games, but you're not going to play them unless you have to?
No, I mean, I'm definitely, especially like when I moved out here, a year and a half ago or whatever, I had not made a whole lot of money playing poker yet. So I was like geared down, I was playing poker 8 or 9 hours every day, either live or in the casinos. And, definitely if you want to get in a lot of volume, in good games, like the mid-stakes games are the way to go. Mm-hmm. And actually, I've noticed a lot, since like, I'd say like a year ago, I was like way better than most of the pros in the mid-stakes cash games online. And I do not think that's the case anymore with like, the advent of all the poker training sites and whatnot. Like, the quality of competition.
Even in the past 18 months.
Yeah, has improved unbelievably.
And the filtering out of poor players too has to be a factor. I mean, unless you're getting a big influx of new players, people are going to improve, and those that don't are going to have to leave a lot of times.
Yes, that's true. And I was just looking, from in the databases and whatnot, I've looked at like, the good players used to win at like 5 big bets 100 online. And nowadays, like the really good players of the mid-stakes are making 2 or 3 big bets 100. So
there's no way to sustain five big bets per 100 long term unless there's a constant influx of
in the heyday of party poker, there was a constant influx of terrible players, right? And that's changed.
there have been moments like right after Chris Moneymaker won, or when the internet first got big, when you just had these crazy periods. But long term, it's hard to sustain that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think not only that, but the quality of your average winning player has definitely, improved, a ton. Where I like the good pros used to be able to really exploit them and take advantage of them and figure out, weaks in their game. And I think, they don't have that as much anymore.
When you talk about mid six, you're talking about like 10-20 or 25-50, or what? How do you define the mid levels?
Like when I've been talking about mid six, I've been talking like mostly like 5-10, 10-20, 25-50. I don't think 25-50 is really a mid six game, but I'm kind of including that in this discussion.
That's reasonable because we know some pros who define 400, 800. That's mid-high.
That was years ago too, when it wasn't even as prevalent as it is now.
Andrew, you talked in your blog, I think, that you've been taking a break from poker for a while. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had a successful year last year and the start of this year, and I was kind of to some extent losing my motivation to do well in poker. Like I didn't have any pressing financial needs. So this year, I've just been taking it easy and relaxing, traveling, going out a lot in Vegas. And I'm actually the past, week and a half, I've actually, finally I've geared back down on poker and I'm starting up again to get ready for the World Series.
Has that been difficult, or you feel refreshed and ready to go?
Actually, I feel refreshed. I actually like, having like a purpose every day when I wake up. So, I wake up every day, I work out with my personal trainer, and then, I'll watch like some training videos online or, go over, some equity calculations and whatnot, and then I'll start playing. And I've started to play pt.1 at Omaha in the mixed games, and I feel myself improving every day again, which is, a really good feeling.
Not playing for a while, is it just a matter of being burnt out, or is it more that for you poker has been very lucrative and has been a means to an end, but that the game itself has lost some of the challenge or interest for you?
I mean, I think part of it is like, the thing, I never got into poker for the money. I just, really liked playing the game and like figuring it out. It was like a strategy game. And I think to some extent, the learning curve, just slowed down, and I was playing more just for money, which made it not enjoyable for me anymore.
Right, now it's a job.
Yes. And I think, so that's just something that's tough to deal with.
You mentioned the training videos and equity calculations. You literally would just program different hands and see how they match up or how they run out, or what kind of exercises are you doing there?
Like now I've been playing a lot of pt.1 in Omaha, so I'll just go in, and look at the big hands I play, and then, just do equity calculations just so
after the fact.
Yeah, so I get an idea.
Right, in PLO that's important.
Yes, and then also not just a hand I get it all in against, but I'll do it for lots of different hands I think they could have in that situation, so I get an idea of my overall equity against their range of hands.
I saw a quote that you'd made, we'll see if it's accurate, that was attributed to you, in which you said when you first started playing and trying to become good, you devoured every poker book that you could. A lot of players, especially a lot of young players, will say, well, I've never read a poker book, or even if they're serious about training sites or talk to other players, they haven't found a lot of value in books. So was it accurate that books were important in the beginning for you?
They were very important to me. When I got into poker, it was I started playing like a lot in like 2004, and that was, I think poker strategy has just, exploded since then, where, back then the books were the best source of information. They were up to date. They had the best strategies, available. And, now I don't think that's true anymore at all.
The training sites have...
And the forums, too. I mean, there's so much evolution in the game, it just seems like the forums are up to date.
Yeah.
Whereas a book that, even if it's valid a year or two after printing, there's been so much evolution in how people counter a lot of the strategies that you're not up to date.
Yeah, and it's just amazing now. You can actually watch the best players in the world playing their hands and talking about what they're thinking while they're playing it. It's just like
that was
surreal.
A dream 10 years ago. I think to myself, I wonder, how, I'll name a tournament player, but I wonder what Eric Seidel was thinking, or what he would, and now you just watch over the shoulder of great players.
Like for me, I can't, I think a year ago, before the training sites got big, I considered myself one of the elite players, and it kind of hurts me in some ways. I can't believe, the guys are doing this, because, I don't think the monetary incentive, besides for one or two guys, really, I think it's hurt everyone.
What is it? Or for zero guys, more likely. I mean, in terms of a direct...
Well, I mean, I think the Carbone's guys probably
Maybe.
have substantial equity stakes in a very
Of
valuable
course,
company.
but even compared to all the knowledge that's being
You think
that's
that it's
widespread that
really?
kills a game, I don't know whether for any individual it really has been worth it.
Do you
Maybe
think,
it has.
Do you think people do it because of ego, or they want to be?
I think at first, the first people who did it, card runners, they were in it because, they were tired of poker and, they wanted a new challenge and it was a way to make money. And then after that, I mean, the people who are, I think part of it is ego and part of like being well known, it's like important to be respected by your peers and whatnot, and this is a good way to get respect. And I think also it's kind of what I was talking about, like a lot of these, really good players kind of were getting tired of poker, the learning curve was slowing down, so they want to do, expand and do business and whatnot.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And we're going to have Andrew Robl back next week for part 2. And we've learned a lot, and I think it's
I need more.
worth continuing.
Two bracelets. Awesome.
Well, these aren't easy to win. Remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my last. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So, I had to call.
We play at fulltiltpoker.com.